Okay, we'll call the Public Works Committee meeting to order. First thing we need is approval of the minutes of the prior. Supervisor Wild, seconded by Supervisor Loeb. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're going to start...
Lanier.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with solid waste.
The minutes are good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to actually turn this over to Julie Butler, talking about our electronics recycling rebid, as well as, I believe, solid waste.
Okay, so with regard to the electronics recycling, I reached out to our current vendor, Evolution. He indicated they would not be able to extend for 2019. Basically, what's happening is that some of the towns are charging their residents for the recyclables, and because of that, they're not able to get a subsidy from the manufacturers. So I think the way they're seeing it is kind of like a double dipping as far as collecting. So if the towns continue to accept or to charge for the recyclables at the transfer stations, the entire pricing structure is going to have to change for the next RFP.
You're specifically talking about electronics.
Just electronics right now, yes.
I don't understand that. I thought we were supposed to charge to cover the cost.
You can charge, but it's going to affect the structure as far as how Evolution can collect that subsidy.
First I've ever heard of it.
I read through, and I think you did too, Kevin, the DEC regulations. It's not very clear as to, you know, what the process should be, but there are clauses in there that do refer to it. It's just not clear.
I guess my question is, so we're supposed to collect the materials in the landfill at no cost to the taxpayer. And Evolution is going to pay us?
No. The entire process is changing. Basically because the market is so bad.
Well, that's it with everything. the
I
market's
know. It's kind of a lose-lose situation. If you're not collecting, then Evolution can collect from the manufacturer, which means that they don't have to charge you to collect. I mean, that's kind of what's happening right now. But they're having to report to DEC, so they're getting much more strict with regard to how collections are.
So he still will pick up the materials from the landfill?
Correct.
As long as we don't charge?
Correct. And how the structure is going to be for the next bid, I don't know. I mean, we have to put it out to see. I mean, I don't know how he's going to, or how anybody would propose. I would imagine they're all in the same boat.
We fill up a 20-foot container pretty fast, believe it or not.
Mr. Loeb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in further clarification of question. Somebody's paying somebody? Evolution for the product. And that if we do not charge our customers, our residents, then that somebody will pay Evolution. Evolution will not charge us. So all we're doing is providing the space.
Correct. In theory, yes. I mean, I don't know, like I said, I don't know what the change is going to be until we actually put the RFP out and see how they submit back to us. But each manufacturer has a goal for recycling. So these recyclers go out, they try to reach that goal, get the subsidy from the manufacturer, but it's hard to explain. You know, it's because it's not clear in the DEC regulations. If you're collecting from your residents, then that's seen as basically double dipping with the manufacturer because Evolution's getting paid twice, or somebody's getting paid twice. Could be the towns because you're collecting from the residents and then you'd be getting a rebate from Evolution. I guess that's a better way to explain it.
Mr. Wild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Julie, can you help me with the numbers? Evolution today is doing what? They're giving us money, or they're just picking it up for free?
It depends. Most things they're picking up for free, like fluorescent light bulbs, it's $1.45 per pound charge to us to
Okay.
get rid of those. They have a whole fee structure in their contract, but it varies by material.
So I guess I'm just trying to get to the bottom line, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. You know, how much are we saving, or
We're not
how much are we
saving
making?
anything.
We're not saving anything. So today, there's a certain revenue that comes into the towns, and it's at risk.
I
The
don't-
rebates we get from Evolution, whether it's in reduced cost or whatever it is, there's some math that we can do, I think.
Well, right now, the biggest charge or the cost is for TVs. So the number of TVs that are getting collected basically outweighs any rebate that we're getting. So we get reports on a monthly basis.
But don't we have to pay them?
You pay them for the TVs.
We
Yes.
pay Evolution
Correct.
to pick them up. So that's why we charge, because we have to pay them to pick up the TV from our landfill.
Today.
Today, that's the way I thought it worked. That's why we charge and set the rate.
Right. And they're saying that per DEC, you can't be doing that in order for them to get the subsidy that they're
Somebody
getting.
doing a Green Apple two-step, aren't they?
I can send you what I have as far
Green apple
as
too.
what the DEC regulations say. Maybe, you can get some clarity there, but
If you don't pick them up, Mike, they end up along the sidewalk. Of course, like,
Shay, just,
Just to clarify something, Evolution came to us 3, 4, 5 months ago, said that they wanted to change their pricing structure because of this. And we said, no, you're right in the middle of the contract, you can't change it. And I said, but if you want to change it, I said, then submit something to Julie and I. I mean, I kind of pushed them in that direction. They didn't submit anything to us. Now that it's a renewal, now they're saying, okay, we're going to change our price structure. So, discussion with Julie, I think we should just put it back out to bid and see what we get for numbers.
well, we have to
Yeah,
because
right, we
they're
have
not
to,
willing
because
to
they're not gonna-
renew.
right.
So.
Claudia's had her hand up numerous times.
Thank you. We have a solid waste management plan through the county that is still sitting out there in draft form, and it covers recycling issues. And I really think it needs to be updated even more than what DEC has told us to in the last year because of all of the changes with the recycling market. And DEC told us that me and Kevin, because I've been communicating with the guy, there are grants out there that this county has not taken advantage of in like 10 years. So I would beg the county, this committee, to direct our staff to seek grant money for recycling, electronic recycling, hazardous waste recycling, and educational materials. And there's a grant cycle right now, due, it's either September or October. So we need to get a handle on this, and the other thing that is coming up a lot, from my perspective, constituents are coming to me asking about a composting facility. These are all things that I think we need to get our hands around, and the county has really kind of just been letting us slide. I know that we don't have any, staff directly to work on this, but I think it's something we need to take a little bit of time and ask our staff to focus on. Because it's a problem right now, especially with these recycling issues. And I just want to make one more point. I do think that it's important that we continue offering it, even if it does cost us some money.
Supervisor Hogan, and then Supervisor Love.
I agree with Supervisor Bramer, but also it's my understanding from what you're saying that this is Evolution's interpretation of the DEC. Have we spoken directly with the DEC? Rather, you know what to get the...
And I haven't called them. No,
Okay.
I'm reading the same material they are. And it, as Julie said, it's not very clear of how it's spelled out. But the gist of it is that if we're and I can't say we, because the county doesn't do it, if towns are charging, they're getting less subsidy from the manufacturers.
So I would suggest that we need to make sure that towns want to continue charging. If we don't want to continue charging, that, I mean, because that's going to dictate how we move forward.
Right, and I can break it down so that we say these are the towns that are continuing to charge, you know, what's your structure with those towns, and then whoever is not charging would have a different structure.
Supervisor Loeb?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. All good discussion, but I think we should not lose sight of the fact that the reason for even considering electronics is to keep those metals out of the solid waste stream. So it may cost us money, it may not cost us money, but let's not lose sight of the fact that we need to do it one way or the other.
Supervisor
Mr.
Wiley?
Chairman, thanks. Can we make the argument that we're not recycling, we're just collecting, and still continue to do our charging?
No, it's true. Good thinking.
Personally, I think there should be a run on promoting residents to return the recyclables to the place that they bought it, because they're required to take those back and they can apply that toward their new purchase. You know, a little bit of education in this regard might save your transfer stations from having much more, or the amount of recyclables you currently do.
Supervisor Garrity?
Well, you know, that sounds good, but it's easy. We're right off Route 9. We take anybody's recycling from Warrensburg to probably Schroon Lake. You know, we don't make it Warrensburg residents only, so we're very convenient going up Route 9. You know, then if you say, well, you gotta take that TV back down to Walmart or wherever you purchase it, they're more apt to, you know, drop it. This is first I heard of this, that, you know, we couldn't charge. It just seems counterintuitive to doing what we're supposed to be doing, but you think it's not that evolution is, they get overwhelmed, because when they come to our landfill, they're collecting quite a few, I mean, they're there sometimes 2 days packing up the containers worth of stuff that we receive.
Well, and this is Evolution's response to us with regard to the extension. There are other bidders out there.
Yeah.
They may come back with a totally different...
The other thing is, you know, it's more charges on our town budgets. I mean, look, we've lost all the money from recycling of plastics. It costs us money to get rid of plastics now, which, you know, you don't get much in a container as far as weight goes. We're paying for that, so we're starting to run into red on our landfills, you know, and how much more burden are you going to put on the towns? I mean, we're under the same cap the county's under. And I understand all the good deeds, and we have a lot of people recycling, you know, that like to recycle, but I don't think they understand. And when you tell them it costs you $165 to take that container down to Perkins or someplace where you're not going to get paid anything for it, they just don't understand it. So, and then we start to run into red, which, I don't know.
Supervisor Bramer?
I just want to reiterate, there are grants available for these programs, especially for the education, even if we wanted to just do some flyers that we put up at the landfill. And I'd like to get a better understanding about whose responsibility this is. I thought it was, this is a county service, and that we contract or have an intermunicipal agreement with the towns. I know Queensbury just passed that intermunicipal agreement last month. So I agree, I hear what you're saying, Supervisor Garrity, and I don't want it to fall on the towns and hurt their budget. There's got to be a better way.
Well, that's my issue, you know. I don't have staffing to go out and search for this stuff and to do that. I mean,
I'll just touch on that. It's, Claudia's right. I just received an email, I think it was last Tuesday or Wednesday, from DEC. I get periodic updates from them when they have new grant programs coming out. I just received the one for recycling, and it was the education component. There's a couple other components to it as well. I have already given that to my environmental analyst in DPW to seek a grant. And again, the solid waste management plan is being worked on. There was a issue with the contract in the county attorney's office, just not some language they had in there. That will be wrapped up, and we will look at the other things in that solid waste management plan to make sure that it's thorough and up to date with today's recycling and the issues that
Still
they're
talks
having.
about the county owning the incinerator.
Supervisor McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, this is interesting. One, we're going on an interpretation of what we think is being interpreted in the readings from, I really think we should follow through to see if someone really actually knows what the real interpretation is, because it does vary, and I'm not saying that you haven't looked into it as hard, but I mean, I believe that, we're collectors, we're not recycling. We have a recycler that's coming in. All we've done is we are a place that you could bring it so the recycler can pick it up. So if they're charging the towns to do that, to collect it, so they can pick up and get their reimbursement and also charge the town for picking it up, this is where I have my confusion. Something doesn't sound right there. Nobody's double dipping, you know what I'm saying? This is a business, and it's a tough business right now. And along with plastic and you know, stuff like that, paper, there used to be money in it, but now it costs us. So I really think we need to look into that, because we don't want to make it so people just, you know, drive down the road and push them out the back in the middle of the night.
Okay. So we vetted this, we know what direction we're going to take?
Yeah. Not to be the bearer of more bad news. I feel like
Okay, motion adjourned.
I've got
No.
a target right here, but we are going to be able to extend the bids for processable, non-processable, C&D, and tires. However, that comes with a $2 per ton increase for 2020. If we were to rebid that, it would be way higher than that. So, just want to let the committee know that right now, Wheelabrator and Finch have agreed to extend. If anybody has, you know, comments or suggestions or thoughts on that, I'm willing to entertain them, but it's not looking good if we were to do a rebid. We had the same discussion last year. It was a $2 increase last year as well. And this will be the final year under this bid. We will be required to bid again next year. And as far as the transportation bids go, I can't reach out to the vendors until October 1st. We look at the state contract fuel pricing to see if that's gone up. If it goes into another fuel category, then the vendors can request an increase because we bid several fuel categories. We've never had to increase as long as I've been doing these bids, but that's where we're at with the transportation.
Supervisor Loeb and then Supervisor Bramer.
Chairman Julie, do you need a motion regarding the extension of the bid?
I do not.
That seems like a reasonable way to go.
It was just an informational item. We already have the authority in the previous resolution to extend.
Thank you. Is Wheelabrator burning the C&D waste in the incinerator? Is that what's happening?
I can look into it, Claudia, I don't know.
I mean, I would assume that is what they're doing. They don't have any...
Actually, I don't know that Wheelabrator is getting the C&D. I think that may be going to
I don't know.
C&D is going to Finch Waste, which is now owned by Waste Management.
Okay, anything else from the committee? For Julie?
I like that.
Get your calendars, Julie. Make your pick.
Yeah, oh yes, I have calendars for anybody that's been notified and hasn't picked up yet.
All but Horicon.
All but Horicon, yeah. Still waiting.
Okay, thank you.
That we order.
Okay, next we'll move into the Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item is on page 2, is a request, notice of intent to fill the position of a senior engineering tech. My senior engineering tech has resigned. He's actually taking a job as a CO in the sheriff's office.
Okay, would someone like to bring this to the floor? Supervisor McGowan, seconded by
I'll second.
Supervisor Garrity. Any discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Next one is a request to fill the position of MEO Light. This is due to a promotion.
I'll move it.
Moved by Supervisor Garrity.
I'll move, 3 and 4 together.
Okay. Seconded by Supervisor Wild. This is 3 and 4. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The next one is on page 5, which is a request for transfer for road projects. Salaries typically aren't included in the projects, so we're just transferring over the salaries.
I'll move it.
Moved by Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor Loeb. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Next one is on page 6, which is a request for transfer for overtime salaries. This was coverage while the division was on vacation.
Moved by Supervisor Loeb, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The next one is on page 7, which is again a transfer for overtime salaries. This is coverage for the individuals working the household hazardous waste and for a program that was up beyond the farm.
I'll move it.
Moved by Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The last one is going to be a little bit of discussion. This was a request to authorize an agreement with various municipalities for the county road maintenance, including snow and ice. I had been tasked last year, coming into this year, to look at the snow and ice rates that are paid to the towns. I did some research. I spoke with DOT, I spoke with Washington County, and I also put a request out to all the towns for their cost to do snow and ice removal. Based on that, I looked back to year 2008 and then up till this past year. From 2008 to about 2013, we were paying the towns approximately $6,378 per mile of road. In 2014, we bumped that up to $6,600, give or take, per mile of road for snow and ice removal. In 2015, we did a big jump to $8,200. That was the first year that my predecessor, Mr. Tennyson, had created a formula. Basically what they were doing is kind of taking an average of the 3 previous years and coming up with a number. With that, we've kept that same formula for the past couple years until last year. Back in 2018, I think the cost that was being paid to the town was $82.60 per mile of road. When we look back at the 3 previous years, it actually was reduced down to $7,900. Some of the towns had questioned why there was a reduction, and again, it was based on just the 3 previous year averages. We ended up last year just putting it at the 2018 rate for this year, which was again $82.60 per lane mile. I believe the chairman of the board and a couple others had asked me just to take a look and see if we were paying the towns the correct amount. Now, within our contracts, we pay the towns to do snow and ice removal. They're not required to use salt on our roads. We actually have in the contracts, and I have a copy of one here, that says they can use either salt or sand on the roads. Salt being a cost of $70 a ton, sand being a cost of $8 a ton. With that being said, as I said, I put out a kind of a questionnaire to the towns of what their costs would be. I only had 2 towns submit to me. And I had Washington County submit what they pay their towns. I had what DOT actually pays the town of Hague on their contract, and then I looked at the county's cost for just the last 3 years, because that's the only information that I had from the other towns. Based on that, if I did the old formula that we always use, the towns this year would be paid $9,095 per mile of road. Looking at the costs that I received from the towns, Washington County, DOT, and then Warren County's cost, I averaged those all together, and that would pay the towns approximately $9,728 per mile of road. Now, in there, DOT does pay the town of Hay $5,131 per lane mile of road, so it's approximately $10,200 per mile of road. Just keep in mind that they pay the town that cost, or that fee, because the town is required to use salt on DOT roads. We don't require that. So again, I have the average for the cost that I receive from the towns in the county as well as DOT and Washington County is $9,728. Or the old way of doing it, where we took the 3 previous year averages, and it'd be $9,095. So I'd like to move forward with the contract, but I think it's up to the committee of I guess what they want to receive based on the numbers that I provided.
Okay, would someone like to weigh into this? Supervisor Wild?
A lot of numbers, Kevin. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming that this is based on a certain amount of labor that they have to provide, some equipment as well as some materials. Have we done an analysis on, some towns may have higher equipment charges because of maybe more roads. And just for example, maybe Johnsburg does 20 miles of roads and they have to have a truck reserved for this, right? Versus another town that might have 100 miles, right? Just for example. So I was wondering if you went through the analysis of town by town instead of just doing it generic across the board.
I did do the towns that submitted to me. I did an analysis on those towns, that's correct. That's what those numbers were.
So we're talking about increasing, sorry, Mr. Chairman, the increase is what, $1,200 a mile?
From 8260, which is this year's, to, and it depends whether we go with the old way of doing the formula, which makes it $9,095. So that would be an increase of $800. I'm sorry, yeah, $800, or the 9,700, which is an increase of about $1,500.
I find it hard to believe that the supervisors on the board that also manage their towns would not want the $9,500. I'm not sure how I can weigh in to say yes or no on this because of my lack of experience understanding exactly what the demands are.
One of the things I also looked at with this as well was if the county took back the 151 miles of roads that the towns take care of for us, what would be our cost? The initial cost just for us to have the equipment, the facilities, because 2 of the areas would be Oregon and Chester, where I have remote roads. There's no quick way to get back to a salt barn or necessarily to fuel, as well as Thurman and Stony Creek. We're looking at a cost, just a startup cost of $5 million and 32 new employees.
So what's our annual cost?
To the town, it's
Total.
approximately $1.4 million.
Supervisor Lowe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if our consideration should actually be in what's the incremental issue we're talking about. Because if you were coming back with $8 a mile, there would be no discussion. So $150,000 is what we're talking about, the additional cost. Or would it be only $100,000 additional cost?
I think with this number, and I don't have
Using the old formula, it would go up to
$9,095
versus $8,200.
versus $8,200.
So that's 900
$800 and change, $900.
times 150. $130,000. It's going to be. Based on our formula that we've used up to this point, that's what we would do. And the difference is between that. Now, why would we, what happened that you can say, here's the other option that it's going to be that much more?
The other option that I had the $9,700, that was based off of, that was an average for last year's winter. And as you all are aware, last year was a tough winter. In fact, I'm already probably over going into this year for my salt. We had to buy 1,500 tons extra last year. So that probably drove up those costs for that $9,700, because we always used my cost, but I just did it for last year alone, and that's where I came up with that $9,700. But we had a lot of overtime last year. There was a lot of freezing thaw last year and a lot of rain, which we had ice on the roads, and I think any town here would verify.
Nuisance, a lot of nuisance storms.
Yeah.
We were approximately $100,000 over on our between overtime, salt, sand.
So that, Mr. Chairman, so that, if you go with the moving average, last year is going to add to that moving average and carry on over the next 2 years. Certainly getting away from this moving average by giving an extra subsidy, and then how will that affect next year's moving average? Do we take that subsidy off? We got to either stick with the formula or come up with a new formula that we're going to stick with.
Yeah, again, as I started off to say that the towns through the county are not required to use salt on our roads. They can use sand if they want. So going back and looking at Edna's that she gets from DOT, that $10,000 per mile of road, because she's required to use salt. They have to put, it's a requirement that for DOT roads that you use salt. We don't require that. Are the towns using probably a lot more sand? They are, but there's definitely a difference in cost. I think the formula's worked. I think there's a increase this year. And again, it might be 3 years from now where we have a less winter. And when I look back at those averages, all of a sudden if a town's being paid $9,000 a year, and then I look back at those three averages, and one of those, the previous year's storm dropped off, and I'm looking at the new 3-year storms, it might drop back down to $8,500 per mile of road as opposed to $9,000. If they're willing to stick with that, we can continue that way, or...
Supervisor Wild?
Thanks. Kevin, is there a way, I'm thinking all these have GPS monitors on them and the like, that we could actually reimburse the towns for the actual expenses every year?
Depends on the mixture. Materials is the difference, because some people use salt and sand and some people use just sand.
Right, but is there a way we could do that? And that way there's less question. We're actually reimbursing them based on data versus a rolling average. I think if we can't do that, I agree with Supervisor Loeb, the rolling average seems to make sense to me, but I was just wondering if we could take it a step further.
The only thing I would say, the drawback to that is we need something for our budget. Right. We need to prepare our budget for 2020. So we need to know, we should be able to put a number in there for our budget, because it has an impact on our budgets.
Well, and it's not like...
I just want to, one piece that the committee should think about is, we have that staff, that equipment, and that stockpile regardless of what the winter is, and we have to carry that. So I'm not so, I know I'm chairing the committee, but I want you to think about that part of it, because I know in Horicon we have 1.5 positions added to our roster. That's 2 trucks, because we could refigure two $225,000 trucks to maintain those roads to be able to do this. So that is also something that's a piece of it. And then on the sand, there's also the cost of having to pick it up, do the other remediation, because we do have issues that arise out of the sand. But we don't want to encourage increased salt use. All of our county roads in the town of Orkin are around the lake shore, right on the lake shore, like steep drop off to the water. Budget officer.
Well, when you've got to travel these county roads to get to work in the morning and the afternoon, and you're putting just sand on them, that's not going to be realistic, because I know what happens is the sand will build up, and then if you rain, if you don't put salt on there and get rid of what's on there, you're going to have a bumpy road, and we're going to be down there with a grader scraping the freaking ice off from it. And, to say that you're not required to put salt on it is kind of ridiculous, because just sand is not going to do the job. Not if you're depending on traveling 10 miles on that road to get to work and get back home. It's just ridiculous.
The 3-year cost that we've always used too, just to touch on what Frank just said, the 3-year cost that the county uses as an average, and that's county's cost. I know the towns pay a little bit more to their employees and such, but that's a 3-year average county cost using salt. We don't use sand. We've never used sand on roads, at least not in the time that I've been here.
We always sell the county roads to the towns for $1.
So let's just stick with doing the 3-year average, and if that's what we've been doing, doesn't it make more sense to just kind of move forward doing that? I have not a problem with that.
Yeah. Either way, it doesn't bother me. Just as long as I know going in.
Right, as long as we know ahead of time, so.
I need to know going in.
Okay, is that a motion?
If you need a motion?
Stick with,
Yeah, second.
okay, so just to be clear, that's the which number, Kevin?
90, I believe it's 90.95.
Right,
9,095?
right.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, $9,095.46 will be.
42 cents.
contract fee.
That'll put us over the top.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hold on.
I'm sorry, where's this extra $800 a mile coming from in terms of,
We have to go to finance.
is it coming out of the general fund? Is it out of Kevin's budget?
We appropriated into the 2020 budget, and the differential from this year to next year is, it's a tax levy item.
Aye.
Okay, was that all ayes?
All right.
Opposed, carried.
Did you want to discuss picking up stream?
I do. Along with that, I had my highway manager take a look at the sand pickups along the edge of roads. The towns that do use sand, and again, as our contract, it says either or, the towns that do use sand along our roads, they do sweeping. They're part of this contract. It's a sweeping contract with the county as well. The sweeping contract is $554 per mile of road. So we did a real quick run through with a front loader, a tandem, sweeper, and I believe 4 or 5 guys, and determined that 550 per mile of road is a reasonable cost. I think we did, on an average like 10 miles. They could do 10 miles in a day, sweeping and pickup. So we think that's a reasonable cost, but most towns only sweep for us. They don't pick up. What I'd like to put in the contract this year is that the towns need to, or would be required to pick up. And the reason I state that, we had this discussion before in DPW, is that sand on the edge of the road that just gets swept off to the side is causing my roads, and it even causes your town roads, to deteriorate very quickly because the water cannot get off the road. So it gets into any of the cracks in the roads, it gets into the subbase, and it breaks apart the roads. So I would also request that, as per these contracts, we would still pay the $554 per mile of road, but the sand needs to be swept up and picked up.
Okay, would somebody like to make that motion? Supervisor Wild, seconded by Supervisor Loeb. Discussion?
Please. Kevin, you mentioned just previously our contract for the snow removal, right, is based on salt or sand. Salt's much more expensive than sand. So we have potentially some roads that are just getting sanded. They're saving the money for not putting salt on, and now we're giving them extra money to sweep it up and take it away. So their reimbursement is significantly higher than the roads that are not getting salted, that are getting salted. Reimbursement is higher than the roads that we're salting. To me, this doesn't make sense. We've got a separate contract. It should be a contract for all, the maintenance and the sweeping.
Supervisor Gary?
I think the issue was, as Kevin brought up, was the buildup of the sand next to the road. Some of the highway superintendents never picked up the sand, So it left an edge in the road, which has caused deterioration. We had a big argument over this probably 3 or 4 years ago. It's not my job. Well, it is their job to do it, but they weren't doing it. The other thing is, Frank brings up a valid point. When I was chairman, I would get complaints on some of the county roads coming over, that certain towns do a better job than other towns, and, I think they take advantage of the county on how they maintain the county roads, too. I think that factors into all this, so you make a valid point, but if somebody just uses sand on a road, and then they don't pick it up, they're creating more cost to Warren County in the long run, so I don't know what the answer is. I mean, no, I don't know who's going to monitor this and say, you're going to be a busy person.
So it almost sounds like we should have a separate rate for maintaining the roads with salt, maintaining the roads with sand, and then a rate for pickup of excess sand. And maybe that's getting too complicated, but
Well, because sometimes you do the roads with using the salt, and other times you use the sand, so if, you know what I'm saying? So you're gonna be able to break it down and say, because you use salt on the road, we're only gonna reimburse you. I mean, to me, it's just you get involved with all this, like, bookkeeping that doesn't seem to me like should be part of what we're doing, but that's just my feeling.
Do you have something else?
Supervisor Garrity's right. I mean, there's been complaints in the past on some of the roads. Usually when those complaints come through, they don't come through to Mr. Garrity. They do come through to me, and we address it. We call the town highway superintendents and get them out there. And as Mr. Thomas said, they're going to have to, if the roads aren't cleared, they're going to have to go out there with graders and scrape it off. We do these contracts with the town because, again, the cost to DPW would be, a $5 million startup cost just for the equipment and buildings and facilities, as well as 32 to 34 new employees for DPW. The towns do, and I will say it myself, they've done a great job. When we do get a complaint, we address it, but they do a good job. And we are trying to reduce salt use, not just for the lakes, it's for the streams as well. So again, as far as do we pick apart to try to do sand on something? As Edna said, there's some towns that will use, Edna might use sand on one road because it's this type of storm, or highway superintendent will, and then the next storm, maybe it's a little icier, they'll bring the salt out. So how do you keep track of all that? I agree, it would probably be a nightmare to go through and try to track all that. So I don't necessarily really think that part of it should change. I do think the change in the contract, though, is definitely the pickup of the sand, because that's really costing the county in the long run a lot more money, because that's the full reconstruction of these roadways. That we're trying to preserve roads. We're not trying to have to reconstruct all of them.
Supervisor Garrity?
I don't want to get too technical in the weeds, but are you talking about, so not using the brush sweeper along the side of the road, you're talking about using a regular sweeper?
No, I guess I'm asking the towns to do, and I guess I'll use the town of Horicon as an example. The town of Horicon sweeps off to the edge of the road with a broom tractor.
Right, that's what I'm talking
And
about.
that's where it stays.
Okay.
Skid steer, front loader, something else to come back through there and pick those windrows up, or knock them off or something, so that they're not built up this high and the water stays
Okay,
in.
all right, that's what I thought.
Supervisor McGowan?
Also, too, it's also the plowing all winter long, pushes the snowbanks, and all that snowbank just melts, and then that burns up. And once that burns up, and if anybody, you drive around, you notice, but whenever the sides of the roads are higher than the roads, there's usually, it's all broken up on the side. So, really removing that, for some reason, I remember when I was younger, there was always in the springtime, there were graders and out there, pushing that stuff, or taking, or digging up. They're still out there doing the ditches, but no, just for clearing, it's, sweeping, but it's really just all winter long, people putting down sand. It just keeps piling up.
So it is, I just want to comment, it is a combination of sweeping and the plowing, because the
Right.
plowing does bring the bank over on the shoulder, and as it melts, you can clearly go down and watch the pile form. So it just needs to be cleaned up. And that was the conversation. We toured the roads and came to this conclusion. So we ready for for me to call the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Next item I have on the information for discussion is road construction update. Most of our contract roads, except for one or two that we're going to save till after Labor Day, when there's less tourists, are completed. And all except, I believe, 2 or 3 in-house projects are completed as well for this year. Tim's passing around the pictures of those projects. Another update, we had the household hazardous waste August 3rd in Warrensburg, and we only originally had scheduled for call-ins for probably about 35 cars. We ended up with 73 cars that day bringing in their household hazardous waste. The last thing I have on the agenda under information for discussion is last Friday I was called by the chairman of the board as well as the Sagamore that a retaining wall or rock wall next to Water's Edge Marina next to the Sagamore Bridge collapsed. So I went up to take a look. It wasn't a complete collapse. A portion of the wall came out. It has not affected anything up top on the roadway or within the sidewalk. I'm going to send you pictures around. It is a rock wall. I was hoping it was part of the bridge, which is the Sagamore's Resorts Bridge. It's not. It's actually county property. It's a 70-foot stone wall. I can see in the past that somebody has pointed up the wall with concrete in between the stones. These are mainly round stones. Most of you know it's not angular stone. They don't lock together. Round stones, typically as they start to move, they come apart. I was called up again Monday of this week. Some more of the wall came down. We knew there would be a couple other pieces that would come out of that wall. It doesn't look like there's any failure anytime soon, but it is the county's wall. It's going to have to be fixed. We've already reached out to DEC just for permitting, because the base of this wall is basically at the shoreline of Lake George. I know that Water's Edge Marina, the owner, requested that I keep that rock wall there. It's most likely not possible that I'll be able to save that rock wall. Once we dig into that wall is probably going to collapse all the way down. And that will we have to replace it with something different. So there's no temporary fix right now. This will be a cost that I did not expect in my budget. We're going to reach out to JMT, who's our structural engineers, probably have them do an LOI with us or an LOA with us for design, and then we'll come back with a number from them, approximate cost. I don't think this is something that we can do in-house. I think we will put this out to a contractor. But again, I don't have a cost right now, and this is not something that I have in my budget. I'll hand around the pictures right now.
Supervisor McGowan?
Why do you think this, what was the contributor of this disintegrating? Just the freeze and the refreeze, the pounding of the people going over to the Sagamore? Cars, trucks?
Most of it's been probably the freeze and thaw periods that have just kind of pushed these rocks slowly. Water does come off the bank there. When they did put in the bridge, they put sidewalks across the bridge. We've actually kind of reshaped the road on that side of the bridge so that water wouldn't go towards that rock wall. We feed it down further into a catch basin, but previous to that, this bridge was put in 2001 or 2. I think they reshaped the wall back in the road in 2012. So it's just kind of been a freeze thaw. That water was getting in there, loosened up enough of those stones. And again, somebody had pointed it up in the past. With mortar between the stones, and the 2 areas that were pointed up were just fine. The area where it wasn't pointed up, where this is, the rocks all came apart, collapsed in that area. Again, I just think it's going to continually go down the line. Most of the rocks that are in this area, most of you have ever seen a retaining wall, typically a retaining wall is tilted back toward the earth that's holding back the embankment. In this area, that whole wall now is pushed out towards the lake. So it's just that pressure being pushed behind it, most likely it's come from freezing wall.
Chicken. Is there any grant money we can go after for this, or kind of preserve, or is this, being the county road going over to the Sagamore, I mean, I'm just, is there anything that we can get help in doing this?
I'm not sure there is. It's our wall in our right-of-way. We took this road in 1929, and that rock wall became ours ever since. Again, and I don't know, I don't have any notes or anything on when that rock wall was pointed up. I'm assuming CBW sometime had done some repointing in there. I can't tell you, I don't have any history on it. There's very little information on this roadway.
Yeah, great idea.
Kevin, you didn't tell us about the party boat that the county has.
Yeah. Supervisor Hogan?
Picture on it.
Supervisor Hogan?
I was asked to pass something along. The subject is whiny constituent, and it's part of a thread, so you can get where this usually comes from, but this was not the tenor of the latest email. It said, please pass on kudos for those responsible for the 13th Lake Road project. Very nicely done and much appreciated from those of us in Garnet Hill. Thank you guys, it looks really great.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anything else under DPW? We'll move
About
on.
putting the chicken wire up there on the rocks.
Davians?
Yeah. They're on 13th Lake Road, right?
They are.
Okay, we'll move into the Parks, Rec, and Railroad portion of our meeting. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Benway.
So I'll turn over to Mr.
Oh, okay, I didn't know who was gonna handle that.
Yeah. On page 2 of the agenda, there's a request for those on the technical position of the naturalist. If most of you are unaware, Pete Wolichewski, who has been a naturalist up beyond, I believe, for 18 years, has resigned, and he's moving on to bigger and better things. So this is to backfill his position.
Make a resolution for both.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Wild, seconded by Supervisor McGowan, and that is 2 and 3. Any discussion?
Yeah, just quick, a naturalist, just someone that teaches, are they like a...
Public programs.
To the public programs, right, so...
They're not walking around naked, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say, right?
I'm gonna say, that's not a bad salary, you know what I'm saying, to do that, but no.
I mean, I know you live in a sheltered life.
That's not what I was thinking, I'm just, you know...
I'm sure that's not what you were thinking.
You guys got me on that one, though, I'll take it.
All right, we will, if we're ready, we'll call the question. Mr. Loeb, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I understand the justification, but we've had discussions about salary levels in the past, of how we would all love to pay a higher amount. Just looking around at the average and saying, all right, the average is 39 to 43, if you cut that in half, it would be more than, it would be 40,500 at the very least. But we have been paying a base of 42. So, I don't know, if we've been paying 42 all along, that was our base, to go back doesn't make sense to me. And it certainly doesn't make sense, even if we go back, to drop it to 40 versus, actually 41,000, would be splitting the difference.
I'll just touch on that real quick. I brought this, when we, you'll see that one says naturalist 3, which is Peter's position. The other one says naturalist 2, which was Karen Bay's position, who in turn went up to be the up beyond administrator. At that time, I brought the committee that we were going to backfill her position, and on the notice of intent to fill, I put salary to be determined. Tim and I had done some research on Naturalist from what we could find, and I did give the salary range that was in there. I brought to committee back then, and I didn't bring the decrease in salary, but I brought to the committee back then that based on this as being an entry-level position, and that Tim and I were looking to do a Naturalist 1 and then a Naturalist 2 in up yonder. So this position right here, although we're not doing it until budget time, we would consider that would be the Naturalist 1 position at a lower entry-level salary that we would believe would be approximately $40,000 based on the research that we had. I'd say an average between those two, most of the salaries fell around $39,000 to $40,000. So we thought $40,000 would be a reasonable salary, and then when we backfill the new position, we'll leave that as a $42,000. But again, during budget process, I'm going to go through, as we should be doing with the salaries, is kind of that Naturalist 1 and Naturalist 2 position. I haven't done that until, and I'm not going to do it until budget.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. We ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The next one is with regards to the fire tower. I'm not sure if there's anything.
Yeah, we're bringing this back as a result of the Finance Committee meeting last month, or I suppose it was earlier this month. The Lime Timber Company wanted to charge $3,000 for access to their lands to build this hiking trail up to the Swede Tower. This is between Brant Lake and Brant Lake and Hague. And they have indicated that they're willing to work with us on that number. And so the discussion we ought to have today is what you want me to take back to them for that negotiation.
Supervisor Loeb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in Glens Falls. This is in Hague. I would actually like to hear Supervisor Frazier's comment as to the value of this to her town. And what's good for Hague is good for Glens Falls, not necessarily the other way around.
Well, we feel it will have like a tourist advantage if there are people that are big on hiking anymore. I know at Silver Bay Association, the people that are there have their own hiking trails. They also expressed an interest in being able to use that when it's done. I guess I just don't look at it as a large amount of money, but Matt, I guess is it looking back that they're looking back to us again, to our towns, to come up with that money?
Well, it's still here at the county at this point for the funding, and I think, unfortunately, I couldn't be here to give a little background on some of the, why we think this is a great idea. And it's in Hague, right between Horicon and Hague off of Route 8. There is plenty of parking there. I believe parking had been questioned. But between Hague and Horicon, we've been developing, this outdoor recreation opportunity. We have the Farrell Wilderness that joins, that is to the north of Hague and Horicon, and there's a lot of people already going through there with a biking that's going on. In Horicon, we have the hub, and we've had, it's probably, I would dare say, 10,000 bikes we see, and those people are hikers also. We have a hiking trail that we've developed behind the hub on their property in a partnership with the town, and they've seen thousands of visitors in their first year on a mountain biking trail. So these people, they all do these recreational they're hikers, they're bikers, they're looking for this outdoor thing. So there was a lot of support for this and a lot of volunteer support for maintaining the trails and trying to move forward. So it is part of a long-term plan.
Could you describe for us some of the costs that Lime will have to cover and why they're asking for money from?
They have leases on a lot of these timber management companies. I mean, they derive all of their revenue. Their business model is based on what they can produce on their property, trees, and then they'll offset their cost through lease agreements with hunting and fishing clubs, who obviously don't want the public walking all over their hunting and fishing grounds while they're enjoying their lease. And so they've got to, work on their agreement to get the acceptance of those recreationists that are on their property, paying their share of their costs there. And then there's the interactions that Lime is going to deal with between the public and the club, which is going to be, they've got a lot of experience in that. It happens a lot. People don't necessarily pay attention to the signs, and when the trail is open, when it's closed, hunting season, fall foliage, it's going to be more management on their part, on Lime's part. So it's a balancing act. And, this had been about a 1.5-year process to get to this point, working with them, and they've been a great partner in being upfront on their concerns, what they had to go back to their leasees and the people that are already on their property. But they've got a business model, and that is all figured in, the money that they generate from these leases. So, Supervisor Lowe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the question on the table is, if finance is not happy with $3,000 a month.
It's a year.
A year.
A year. $3,000 a year.
Somebody else quoted that.
That we want to go back to them with $2,500, $2,000, $1,500. That's the question. So
That
it's
is-
gotta come back
that's
from
what's-
us to the recommendation of them, and if Lime agrees, then it will go back to finance.
That's what's here and before us. Supervisor Wild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, I missed the finance committee, but I was curious what the arguments were to send this back.
Well, I don't think it came from a committee member, but one particular supervisor thought that Lime Timber should just do it for free, should let us enter the property.
And they tabled the discussion, or?
Yeah, went forward. I don't remember all of it, but it was kind of, we didn't have all the information. That was unfortunate.
To me, it doesn't seem like a large expenditure
Yeah.
for the potential that we get out of this.
And we have since received letters from the camps, the children's camps, about, the hiking with the children's camps up there. It's good to get the kids out in nature, and going to a fire tower, which is, dying off, is important, I thought. So it just kind of got hijacked, but I think we need to revisit it today. And
Supervisor
Did
Frazier?
we ever go back to Lime yet, or are we that's still out there to see if they would come down, or see if they would do like a one-time thing where you'd pay this much and then you would have a permanent agreement with them, or we haven't gone back to them? Is that the idea?
I went back to them to see if they were even open to the possibility of going down, which they are. One thing that they're not open to is a one-time payment for an easement that will continue into the future. They'll do an annual fee, and my thought was to come to the committee for a range on what you think is fair to the county, and I'll go back to them with that range.
Okay.
Supervisor Lowe?
Two comments. I would offer that we ask $2,500. But I would also say, if these people who are coming to the area, and you talk about the thousands of visitors, if they're from out of town, they're coming and they're dropping $300 a day. So if we can get something that's going to attract 100 people, we've made money, a lot of money.
That was my thinking.
$1,000.
That was my thinking. There's one highway between Hague and Horicon.
Right.
And they're either going to come from the north and south on Route 9 in Hague. There's one store, there's the Hague Market, that they're going to stop at. They're going to travel through that community and see everything there. Through Horicon, they're either going to go to Chester or Horicon. And I think it would be a benefit. Supervisor Bramer?
One of the concerns about the dollar amount was raised by Supervisor Leggett, but I can't remember exactly what his comment was related to trails in Chester where they have a partnership with Lime. And I think that his comment was that they have a different kind of arrangement with Lime. But one of my concerns is that we're only getting a yearly or a they're not willing to enter into a long-term easement with us, and yet we're going to commit county funds for this, not just the $3,000 or less than that, hopefully, but to put in a trail. What kind of assurance do we have that they're going to continue that for more than just 1 year? Hopefully there's something out there. Hold on, I have one more comment.
No, I'm just,
Okay.
you're right on top of
Okay.
it.
My other thought is that this is perhaps a partnership with the town, so if we, county, chip in some money, the town put in a little bit of money, and then we've got enough to get Lime to agree to this. But I would like to see where they are committing to us for long term. Once we put this trail in, hopefully it's not just a one-time thing.
I just would like to make one comment. That piece of property, which is landlocked, 12 acres, 11 point something is landlocked, has had no public use for it whatsoever. It was planned for a communications tower that the county decided they weren't going to do that. So there's been no activity on that property that we acquired on behalf of the taxpayers of the county of Warren. There's been no taxes paid on it, no benefit to anybody, and here's an opportunity.
Well, it's great. I think it's great that there's such tourism dollars being created from this outdoor recreation, and in my trend of going to other topics, I will point to the railroad corridor, which could be a great outdoor recreational opportunity. But anyway, if what you're saying to me is we're not using it for the public, I mean, another option would be to sell the whole thing. I don't think anyone would support that. So let's make it happen, but in a way that protects the county going into the future, and is at as small of a cost as we can get Lime Timber to agree to.
Supervisor Wild?
Mr. Chairman, thanks. I'd like to suggest that we go back and see what they're willing to offer and get some reasons in terms of why they feel that they need to have some type of fee structure. But from my perspective, $3,000 a year is nothing compared to the money that's potentially going to be committed to the Civic Center in Glens Falls. No offense, Glens Falls supervisors. But it's a very minor expense, and I think that it's something that I would totally support, even at the rate that it is today.
We did have a motion,
We do?
I believe that was a motion from
Yes.
Supervisor Loeb for $2,500.
And I just want to, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I didn't have to give you the calculation, but if 100 families visit this area from out of town because of this tower, that's going to put $300,000 into our economy. And I say that with full confidence. Of course, all the statistics will support that. But would you modify it to what Mike said?
0 to 3,000.
0 to 3,000?
Yeah. We'll go back to
Well, no,
the-
because it's a small amount of money, and we're taking up their time, we're going to make money off of this. They have to deal with expenses. It's unreasonable for us to say, well, out of the kindness of your heart, as a business, why don't you just give this to us? Let's come back to that. We don't want to do 2,500, 2,000. Let's come back to them and say, this is what we'd like. They'd probably say, okay. But if you say, you put it back in their hands, they're going to say
$2,000 to
$3,000.
$3,000. How's that?
So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, now,
The motion.
discussion. Supervisor
$2
Bramer.
to $3,000.
Is the user agreement for a number of years, like 20 years? We'll pay this every year for 20 years, or what's the deal?
1 year.
1 year?
No renewal clause?
Yeah, right. What about that?
I'd have to get it out. I think there was.
There has to be.
Just so the committee knows, also on the back end, what needs to be invested in this. There was, Superintendent Hajos can talk about the cost of the structure. The trail development would be done by volunteers, and then there's signage, which, they're very small signs. So it's a minimal investment for this, and really it's from 1 year term, which could be to our advantage if it doesn't pan out. I mean, you're going to have obviously a kiosk where somebody would sign in, where you can gauge how many people and where they're coming from. And I also have, for the committees, if they would like, I did receive the visitor reports on all the other fire towers, which is pretty incredible, which would surprise you. Supervisor Lowe?
Chairman, I'd like to, based on secret discussion with Supervisor Garrity, I'd like to modify my motion that we offer $2,000 a year.
Okay.
Between 2 and 3. That's
Or
2
no,
to 3.
Hard number, $2,000 a year.
Hard.
Otherwise, we'll wishy-washy.
I-
They'll come back and they'll say, we'll do $2,300.
I will feel out Lime also on their appetite for mutual renewals.
I'll second the amended motion.
I gotta see if Supervisor Wild would agree to that amendment.
No, I'll let McGowan do this. I believe it should be, I think $3,000 is minimal, but
Well, we have a motion on the floor then originally, and the second won't agree to the first.
Okay,
So,
I'll second it.
So you agree to the,
Third.
okay.
Frank, if you could-
Any other discussion?
Just make it happen.
Right, but we gotta bring it back. If there's no range, we gotta bring it back.
Well, we gotta send it to Octax and Finance. So
You gotta
I'll bring
send
it,
it
I'll
there.
bring a number back to Octax and Finance. As long as it's between 2 or
Fast
3, we
track
can
it, bud.
consider that this
Get
committee's
ready
okay
for
with
the
it.
next week.
So is that the motion between 2 and 3?
Okay,
I'm
make it between 2 and 3.
Yeah, that's the right way.
Okay.
Okay.
Super-
I second that.
Superintendent Ajos would like to
Just-
add something.
Just a concern with Lime Timber, whether or not they'll renew every year. I think they've renewed with us the Hague snow goers probably for the past 10 years,
Decades, yeah.
at least.
At least.
I don't think they would not
Same
renew
property,
with us.
we're on the same property.
Same
as
property
this.
as the Hague snow goers are on.
Okay, we'll call the Supervisor
How
Bramer.
much mileage does that cover?
Oh.
Is that,
We're getting off topic. We're off topic. Let's vote on our
Yeah, let's
resolution.
get this moving.
And then you can have your discussion on
it's a
it.
comparison on price, we paid $3,000 for that. Is it 1 mile of a snowmobile track?
3185.
31 miles for
No,
$3,000.
3185 is what the fee is for the Lime Timber for the Hague snow goers. 3,185.
You're right, okay.
Call it.
Please,
But-
Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, but don't they also get money from the state for the registration for those snowmobile miles and da-da-da-da-da, so, yeah, so, all right.
Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
You're on the clock, man.
Yeah, nice job, Matt.
The next item
Okay.
I have is from the Thurman Snowmobile Club. They would like to use the railroad again this winter. If we're not gonna entertain anything, they would still like to go from Stony Creek Ranch to the Thurman Station.
Supervisor Wild?
Do we have to have a motion for this? No, then I'd like to make a comment. I'd like to delay this just for a little while until we can understand what type of relationship we're going to have with a potential suitor for the rail.
Okay, fair enough.
What do they need to know?
I would say,
To be fair to them.
safe, another good month.
When the snow
Whether or not they
So
start
the snow
doing
flies.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
they gotta do the trail maintenance and all
Well, they start covering the bridges and the frogs and all the stuff that,
Okay.
you know, some of them
Right. Well, let's be respectful of that also.
do. Okay, next.
Okay. I'm going to call on Supervisor Bramer before she goes up through the ceiling tiles. Supervisor Bramer.
Great, I think this is a step in the right direction. I've been saying this for the last probably 2 years, that we should allow people to use the railroad corridor if there's no trains running on it. I'm going to make a snarky comment, are we going to charge these guys $3,000 a year to use our lines, like Lime Timber is doing to our people? No.
Okay, next.
Next thing we have on the, under increase for discussion and review is Adirondack Safari Tent Company on the fairgrounds. Just wanted to give you an update. They have been paying on time. And I guess this is on me. Last week, I believe, the 4-H group was out at the fairgrounds, and they typically use one of the pavilions out there. One of the pavilions, which is in the lease agreement that we blocked off, that Adirondack Safari should not be using. Tim and I have kind of given them, and I guess it's on me, giving them a little leeway, that they had an ice machine, some of their golf carts in this one pavilion. They had all the material removed before the 4-H group got in there.
No, they didn't.
So they had it done by 10 o'clock that morning.
Told me. 10:30, my staff.
Yeah.
Both of them set up.
after 4-H showed up to set up at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
You're leaving out the RV that was parked in front of the stage. Sorry, you go ahead.
So, they did have an RV out there, in a car, and they had some things in the pavilion. Since that point, again, this was on me that we allowed them to go in there. We knew when the events were coming for those two pavilions, but the agreement clearly states that they cannot use those areas. So we have asked them, and they have moved all the material out of there, and it won't be going back there. They did send me an email, or Tim an email, or a comment that now they can't do their art classes, and I had asked them that if they want to do art classes, they can come to committee, or they can just pay the fee rate that we would normally charge somebody to use it.
Supervisor Garrity?
I find this hard to believe that Adirondack Safari should not abide by the rules in their contract every year. And I would be willing and probably able to sit down with the owner of that and explain to him how it works and how it needs to work from this port. This is the second year in a row there's been a little issue with them. I'm having a hard time with this because this should have never happened. And regardless of what we think about it, it's not right. And for this entity to take advantage of the 4-H or think it's okay, I don't think it's okay. And I will donate my time to sit with this gentleman and explain to him just how things have got to work going forward, because it should not happen again.
Supervisor Hogan?
To put this in perspective, they have 40 tents out there, and they had a revenue-generating tent inside the space where they were not supposed to be operating. They also had another tent where somebody was apparently living inside the space where they were not supposed to be operating. With 40 tents, for what they're charging, they have to fill 2 tents in order to cover their daily expense to the county. So the rest is pure revenue. These are not people who've had to buy the land, develop the land, or pay taxes on the land. They are there by our good graces. The least they can do is follow the simple rules of not occupying a space that is shaded on a map. I'm not looking for them to cease operations there. I do wish that we would send them a letter or sit down with them and explain.
I've had Mark come into my office before about certain things that he had to do for the town of Warsaw. I mean, I'd be more than willing to sit across the table from Mark and explain to him how it's going to work going forward.
But
Let me know, Kevin.
But the bigger piece of this, is that over the years we thought we had developed a contract wherein we could control what was happening on property owned by the county. I just want to caution all of us. I mean, we're failing that, and I'm not putting that on anybody. As an entity, we are failing to control what is happening on county property by a contract. I want to caution us from using that same thought process moving forward.
Mr. Benway?
Well, in sincerity with everything you're saying, I do exactly what you people have asked me to do. This guy doesn't care. I'll tell you right
Right,
now.
that's my point.
He does. As soon as I leave, he does exactly what he wants. If he doesn't like my answer, he goes to Mr. Garrett. If he doesn't like his answer, he went over to our county attorney the other night about getting out of the pavilion. He sent me stuff about proposals. I'm like, it's in the language.
Excuse me, Tim.
Boom, out. Get out.
He's never contacted me.
Well, he tells me this.
He's never contacted me, because if he had contacted me, it would have been an entirely different answer. You don't know me too well.
So I think Mr. Garrett, Supervisor Garrity had offered to take care of this issue.
Supervisor Wild will join Supervisor Garrity.
And he has $2,000 that you
Should I go as a mediator?
No, Kevin Hajos can be the bad cop, or I'll be the bad cop.
I'll be the bad cop. I've already been the bad cop, and
We
I'll
have.
continue to do that.
You can be the good cop.
And I would would like to just offer up that I will set up a meeting for sometime next week. If you just let me know your availability, I'll do it at DPW. He can come over and have
That's
a
right.
discussion.
We do it on our turf.
And they will not be back next year, by the way. 4-H is staying across the road.
Yes.
Well, that's not,
I know, but
that's
I'm
not...
just saying.
Neither here nor there,
That's
though.
always the issue, is 4-H.
The point is Mark needs to understand the rules of our contract, and we're not going to allow this to happen again. Or,
I agree.
sayonara.
There you go. That's what.
Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, you guys have all heard this from me before. One of the core competencies of our leadership team has to be managing contracts. It's something that, we were talking about the D&G property earlier, another example of not managing our contracts. I consider it a core competency of our leadership team to make that happen. If you need help, I'll definitely jump in and help. I'm sure our attorney would like to help also, but we need to manage the contracts so that we are being protected. Not so much that we want to get more money out of this or the like, but if they're on our property and they get hurt, there's a certain liability that we may incur because of that. We need to manage these contracts better. Thank you.
Supervisor Thomas, did you have your hand up back there? Oh, I didn't know.
I did. If this issue arises again and he seems to do whatever he feels like doing after we leave, then it needs to come right back to this committee or right to the chairman of this committee and we try to proceed of removing this stuff from the process.
Actually, if I may just add on that, let's take a motion to say that if he's in default again, that we begin the proceedings of canceling the contract and getting him out. Can we do that?
You make a motion if you get a second.
That's where my head is at anyway.
So I don't need the motion. I'm just relying on our county administrator to make it happen. That's even simpler.
Well, the contract says.
Contract covers.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Thank you.
Okay, anything further for the Parks and Rec Railroad?
I wanted to, real quick, if I could touch on this. The Warrensburg Bike Rally happens every year. Mr. Garrity got a letter actually from Ed Zibro, who is the president or chairman of the Warrensburg Bike Rally. I just wanted to touch on a couple things that Mr. Zibro had put in the letter. They do their own independent traffic count. We had done it the first couple years out there, but now they have their own traffic counters that they put out there. They've had approximately a 15% or so increase in bikes, cars, and trucks over the 2018 report. I believe in 2019 they had anywhere from 80 to 94,000 individuals, thus proving that the bike rally is growing. They also want to thank Mr. Garrity as well as our highway department, Mr. Benway of Parks and Rec, and myself for assisting them.
Awesome. Thank you. Just one more thing, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman and committee. But I read in the illustrious Post-Star that New York State is pursuing the abandonment of the line above ours, the rail line. Do we have any comment about that or implications of what that might mean to the negotiations we're currently under?
Yeah, the proceeding is resuming. It's the DEC's adverse abandonment proceeding with the Surface Transportation Board. United Rail weighed in and asked the DEC not to proceed. They said no. They said we're going to move forward with this. There hasn't been freight activity on this line in decades. The purpose of the STB proceeding is to let the market come out. If there is a market for doing freight, that will be ferreted out through this process. So I think that our process can go in parallel with this, and we just watch and see what happens with that line, and we can adjust going forward.
I'll just let the committee know too that during the last committee I stepped out and I was interviewed on that and asked what our opinion was of the abandonment. I said I think we're concerned with our 40 miles, that the abandonment doesn't preclude us from exploring our options on the line.
Whether you're for a trail or you're for freight or you're for a passenger rail, abandonment is a worthwhile thing to have happen. That proceeding is, if there's going to be an economic basis for freight, it'll come out of that proceeding, and the Surface Transportation Board will put its stamp on that and will then help us to deal with that. to either get into an operating contract or to negotiate a sale for freight purposes. If that doesn't happen, and an abandonment is staved off by a rail banking petition, which is what DEC has in mind, that's great for trail advocates. If for some reason neither of those things happen, and the line is declared abandoned, if that were to happen to our line, you could still have a passenger rail. It's abandoned for freight purposes only.
Okay,
Motion.
did you want to do?
Or should we do an executive session on the negotiation?
Okay, we need to discuss the ongoing negotiations with Euro, so we're going to need
You
an
need executive session?
session.
Yes.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor Hogan. Any discussion? All those in favor?
One thing I believe in
Opposed?
this country is
Carries.
if we tell somebody
So we're back in the regular session. There was no decisions made or no motions made in executive session. Anything else before the committee? Motion to adjourn? Supervisor Wild, seconded by Supervisor Hogan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank
I
you.
have a question.
You
I've
want
been here
these
for nearly
guys?
2 years.